Well, you might be familiar with the view behind me. We're on the barge heading out of the Brisbane River over to Moreton Island or Mulgumpin. It's an absolutely fantastic location. We're going to do some four-wheel driving, we're going to do heaps of fishing, we're going to check out all the sites, and we're just going to have an awesome time. So join us on this episode of Driving with Doug. We're going to hit it up, we're going to have some fun. We start our adventures at the MyCat ferry at the Port of Brisbane. These days, it's really the only way to get to Moreton Island. It's the only vehicular barge that operates a constant service. Straight out of the port, you've got to head across Moreton Bay, which in itself is quite a nice trip on a calm day. You're dropped off at Tangaluma, just near the resort. It's an absolutely awesome view from there, and you can head straight across the island on Middle Road over to the eastern beach. We're heading down to the southern end of the island, so running with the tide, we're heading down the beach all the way to Coringal. That's where we'll find the fishing club. As I mentioned on this trip, the Amarok had to get left at home. So we've got this mint GU Patrol and this awesome Toyota Prado that we're going to be taking around the island this time. Onto the ferry, it's time to head off. Can get pretty busy. There's plenty of ships out here, cars, containers, all coming off into Brisbane. It can get pretty packed on the barge too. We're full up this time, and these cars are Tetrised in here like you wouldn't believe. It's also super important, make sure you set your tyre pressures before you hit the sand. 16 to 20 PSI is going to be good for almost every four-wheel drive. Looks like the boys from the Defence Force even felt like giving us a bit of a hello on the way past. It's quite a nice unload spot, straight onto the beach off the barge. You're at the lovely Tangaluma Resort, just near the shipping wrecks. Nothing like that feeling of coming down the ramp. You know it's time for a good holiday. Straight off the barge, you're at one of the most iconic destinations on Moreton Island, that being the Tangaluma wrecks. 15 ships sunk between 63 and 84 to create a little anchorage for recreational boaters coming over to visit the island. It's an awesome place to swim and have a snorkel. You can even paddleboard across from the beach, take a boat, or go on a sightseeing tour with the Tangaluma Resort. Just be careful though, the currents can get a little strong sometimes through here. Unfortunately, we didn't have time and we had to head off and see if we could beat the tide on the eastern beach. So it was straight into Middle Road. Bit of a rugged trip, but it's also very scenic as well. Coming in on the eastern beach, fortunately we still had plenty of tide left. It's really easy to travel along the whole length of the island on the eastern side, as long as you're not doing it right on high tide. It runs the whole 37 kilometres from the top end all the way down to the bottom end of the island, with the exception of one or two spots that kind of get covered in trees, so you have to take little back roads behind them. The exception of one or two bits of coffee rock and the sandstone that makes up Cape Moreton, the entire island is made of sand. It's been washed up here over thousands of years as ocean currents and winds have brought them up the coast. In fact, if you combine the structures that make up Moreton Island and Fraser Island, which are essentially the same kind of natural formation, you're left with the largest single sand structure in the world. Even Moreton's not immune from all the rain that we've been having recently, and a couple of spots along these tracks it filled up with a bit of water. Nice and slow though, no need to push the water too far and make more of a mess. As soon as we got into town, it was time to say a quick hello to one of the locals and then head into the fishing club. It's important to note, because they pop up a few times in this video, you can't bring your dog with you to Moreton Island for your holiday. If you're a resident of one of the townships, you can have a dog there with you, but it's not allowed into any extra areas of the national park, and it's supposed to be on a leash at all times. We got the gear unloaded and into the clubhouse, and then it was time to rig up the rods before we headed up the island. Now, I'm not going to lie, I am not the world's best fisher, so it was always good to get a bit of advice from the experts to know what to do. Once we were done with that, it was time to get the rods on the car, head up and explore the island and have an afternoon fish on the way back. You beauty. Ready to go, it was time to head back up north and check out some of the sights along the way. So I've stopped here at Mirrorpool Lagoons on the southern end of Moreton Island, and what this is a lovely little freshwater, well it's freshwater at the moment, lagoon, where a bunch of migratory birds and a whole bunch of wildlife rely off this little bit of protected nature here. As you can see, there's a big sandbank running through the middle here at the moment, which is separating it from the ocean. Now, the sand is constantly moving here on Moreton, and I was actually talking to the boys from the club just before, and they were telling me that no more than 6 months ago, just over behind us, was all washed out, and the salt water was coming up in here into the lagoon. It's amazing just how quick things can move here on Moreton Island. So we're up here on the northern end of Moreton Island at one of the famous little locations here called Champaign Pools. It's one heck of a swimming spot. Up here at about mid-tide, you get the water crashing over the rocks and you can swim all through here. You do have to be careful, it can get a bit wild sometimes, but it's an absolutely awesome location. What's interesting here too is we're actually on the very northern tip here at Cape Moreton, and Cape Moreton is the only part on Moreton Island that isn't completely made out of sand. It's actually made out of sandstone, and it forms the foundation for all the rest of the sand to get washed up by the currents and form in here in Moreton Island. The Champaign pools themselves are amazing. What happens is as the water rushes over the top of the rocks, it gets pooled up in these little sections where you get this seaweed and a bunch of little tiny fish. They all live in these little crevices. You could literally sit here for hours and just watch the waves, check out the wildlife and relax. This is what Moreton Island is all about. quick turn around, it was a short run back up the tracks, and we were at the top of Cape Moreton and the famous Cape Moreton Lighthouse. It is actually the oldest lighthouse in Queensland, built and lit first in 1857. It's obviously come a long way since then, with modernisations including solar, batteries, houses. In fact, if you're interested in learning a lot about the lighthouse keepers, the jobs, and really what it was like to maintain these amazing structures, there's a big information house that you can visit while you're up there, and it's got a whole bunch of really good information in it. Well, with the adventuring out of the way for the afternoon, it was time to do what we came here for, and that was some fishing. But first, we needed to pick up some bait on the way back, and that involved keeping our eyes peeled for pippies and having a bit of a go at worming as well. When the tide's coming out, you'll actually find massive clumps of these pippies in the low tide zone. They get kind of revealed as the cars drive across the sand. So a quick dig down on these little dots, and you'll find yourself a good pippy. Now obviously keep in mind there's a bag limit of 50 per person for these guys, so you can't go too crazy. Only take what you need to avoid having to throw out dead ones. You may not use as many as you think. I had a quick go at worming too, and I tell you what, a lot more difficult than I thought it would be. Some of the blokes here made it look easy, but for a lot of us, oh well, we struggled, gave it a good go, but didn't have a lot of luck. With that out of the way, bait ready to go, it was time to just sit down, enjoy the afternoon, throw a reel out and catch some fish. Let's go. After a cracking session of fishing, it was time to head back in the dark and get some dinner ready. No time to prepare the fish today, so that'll be a job for tomorrow. But we've got some awesome chicken pasta bake going on for dinner tonight. Let's get into it. I tell you what guys, it's nothing like sitting around, having a beer, having a good feed and a chat with your mates. If you're not into this, oh man, you're missing out. So I promised on the pilot episode that we would do a cooking episode. You know, like every good Australian four-wheel drive TV show. So this morning we're going to do a classic Aussie breakfast special. Not too difficult to make. Anyone can manage it, and it's pretty bloody nutritious. So what you want to do is you want to put some toast in your toaster, and when it's done, pop it up, grab one, walk over, chuck her on the plate, plenty of butter. Can smack that Vegemite on there. You know, be pretty liberal. And there you go, breakfast done. So day two, and what totally different weather it is today. We've got these squalls out to sea. We're down here at the beach. We'll do some early morning worming. Just get up fishing today. We're expecting a bit of rain, so we'll take it easy and just have a nice chilled fishing day today, I reckon.
That's clear, isn't it?
Even that man's man has given up.
So while the boys are having another fish, I thought this might be a good opportunity just to have a quick chat about some of the variety of vegetation that you've got on Moreton Island, because it's actually an amazing place. It's one of the very few places left along the coast of Queensland that is almost completely undisturbed by human and pest species and pest fauna. And what that means is that the ecosystem on Moreton Island is fantastically original, natural. The whole cycle, the whole biological cycle is running almost completely as it would have been 150, 200, 2,000 years ago. And one of the amazing things as you travel around Moreton Island is that you'll notice that there is a huge variety in the different ecosystems and environments on the island. For example, you might at one moment find yourself in a bushy eucalyptus forest with grass trees all around. Next minute, you're in the mangroves along the coast. Into even more dense bushlands in the centre of the island. And then you've got this kind of bottle brushy environment along the coast that is really kind of typical of the Australian beaches. If you take a look behind me, you'll also see I've got some sand dunes up here behind me, ones that you're obviously not allowed to drive or camp on. And there's a really important reason that you don't drive up on the sand dunes, and it's because the dune grass that you can see behind me actually sends roots down into these dunes and across the surface, and it helps it maintain a natural break from the ocean, from the wind and from the waves. As we've gone and travelled through the island, you've seen areas of beach that have been washed away, track that's been cut away, and you can see just how fragile that soil actually is. Moreton Island is constantly changing. The winds, the tides, and the ocean currents are reshaping it all the time. It's absolutely incredible when you come here to this place. 6 months' time, a year's time, things could be totally different to the way you remember them. And it's so important that we take the time to look after this ecosystem. I think my mate summed it up pretty well. Hey mate, can you tell me one place you'd rather be right now? Well, after another successful session of catches, I think it's time we head back and we start prepping up some of these fish for lunch. So we've had a cracker of the fish over the last couple of 24 hours. We've got some beautiful dart here laid out in front of us. So Luke, what are we going to do for lunch today?
Dart.
We're going to do dart, yeah, nice, awesome.
We didn't catch anything else.
Obviously, we're going to have to gut and prep these now. So if you're not interested in seeing us do that, guys, I've got to put a little chapter setting down below. So you can just skip straight over this part if you're not interested in seeing this. But let's get cracking. So why don't you run us through the process, mate?
So, first of all, when you first catch a dart, you want to bleed them. So you cut them from their head down so that we can remove some of the bad things we don't want to be eating. Then once we prep the fish, get a nice flat surface that you can start. Make sure you have a semi-sharp knife. Sharp knife be better. And then we start the filleting process. We're going to cut these fish and remove the skin, so we're not going to scale them. And that's probably about it to start, though.
Cool. All right, well, let's get cracking. And
it has been a while.
You come forward to me, mate.
So we cut down the neck, or just below the cut line, to bleed the fish, and then we come along the top of the spine, down the back. This is how I was taught by my father, which is he's here at the moment. Like that, and you sort of get an idea of what we're aiming for. We want the knife to travel the back side of the rib cage of the fish as we do it, which then links up to the first cut that we had at the top. Now the dart have a small rib cage that you'll follow with your knife. So the back of the spine here, I've missed a bit there. You just sort of go up along the fish as you go. Continue down until you get a fillet. There's a fillet there. That's sort of what's been left. I've missed a small part there. Now to skin it from this point, you want to grab the tail end of the fish, run your knife so that you can just feel the skin, and then hold that part. while running it along the back of the skin of the fish, and you'll see the separation there. You get a small amount of the skin left over. And that's pretty much a fillet.
Awesome. Well, we better get cracking into these then, and yeah, get some lunch ready.
Yeah.
Cheers, mate. You know what? Gordon Ramsay might have something to say about our cooking methods. What does it matter? It tastes damn good as a good feed. By now we were pretty much done for the day. It was time to say another quick hello to the locals and then pack up for the afternoon. Hey Luke, mate. What are you doing?
Yes, Doug. I'm just digging a hole, mate.
Neat.
Yeah.
Hey, have you hit the like and subscribe button yet? It really helps us grow the channel.
No, I got no time for that.
Oh, well, man, and next time you see it, can you do me a favour? Can you just hit it real hard for me? Yeah, cheers, mate. I mean, it really, what are you doing? No.
Don't know who this Doug is. He's gone, mate.
Well, with a new day on the horizon, some of the boys were a lot keener to get up than others. Nothing like an early morning fish to wake you up. After that, it was time to fuel up the trucks and head out for another day adventuring around Moreton Island. The weather had cleared up a lot, so this one was going to be a cracker. So what you do actually need to keep a bit of an eye out for when you're on the southern tip of Moreton here is there's a lot of wood that gets washed up along these beaches as the sand here constantly changes. And you do want to take your time a bit because you will find occasionally a nice little plug just sticking out of the sand looking for your tyres. And if you do go over one of them, well, you're going to have fun changing a tyre on the beach. So it does help to just take your time a bit. Always when you're driving along the sand, just be aware of what's around you. There's no need to speed along here. Moreton Island's a lovely place and you want to enjoy the scenery anyway. So you don't actually have to hit things too hard.
Just don't need the momentum.
We are literally just going to crawl up this beach entrance here, doing about 3 or 4 kilometres an hour. It's really important for people who have never driven on the sand before as well to understand that you don't have to be intimidated by driving on sand. As long as you do a couple of things right, you've got the right tyre pressures, your car's in 4-wheel drive, you can just take your time, and for 99% of the things that you're going to encounter, you're going to be absolutely fine. Now, if you're running off into little side bits that are really squishy, or sometimes you get to car parks where you've got really soft sand, you might need to pay a bit more attention, take your time a bit more. But for just everyday driving on the sand, guys, don't be intimidated by it. They're great places to visit, and it's really not difficult to do. The other thing to keep in mind when you're driving in sand, particularly if it is really soft and you are worried about getting stuck, is that most of the time, particularly if you're going up something with a little bit of an angle, it's nice and easy just to reverse back and have another go at it. The important thing is that you don't sit there and just absolutely foot to the floor and dig yourself deeper into the sand. Because when you do that, that is when you will get stuck really badly, because your car's going to sink down, you're going to diff out, you know, parts of the underneath of your car are going to get stuck in the sand, and then you are going to be out digging, you're going to be out with the max tracks, and you're going to have a horrible time getting it out. So just always take your time. If you feel like you're going to get stuck, just back off, reverse, have another go. So let's have a quick chat about 4-wheel drive modifications for your car and driving on the beach. One of the things that you will find with some of the modern dual cabs and some of the more softer rotor cars is they're quite low underneath the differentials, and sometimes as well under the bash plate at the front of the car. Now what you can find is when you're going through these inland tracks, particularly if it's been dug out a lot, it's really dry, you've had a really busy period, the centre of these tracks can actually come up quite high. And it's the same with things like beach entrances and the like. Most of the time people get stuck in the sand is actually because they run out of ground clearance underneath the car. So having a bit bigger tyres and like a 2-inch lift, but tyres are obviously the most helpful thing because they're going to raise your differentials off the ground. It's going to help you get through those really eaten out sections of sand where you need that extra ground clearance to stop yourself getting caught up in the middle of the track. It's also really handy to have rated recovery points on your vehicle. Almost all the new cars you'll buy these days have got little tow points. They'll look like little eyelets that you screw a little eye into that you get, it'll be in your glove box or something like that. And these are not rated recovery points. They're made for helping get your vehicle up onto a tow truck if it breaks down. So you really shouldn't snatch strap or tow off these points. If you don't have a bull bar with rated recovery points, you can usually pick up some recovery points that will just bolt to the front of the chassis. And these are what you want if you're going to be snatching out of deep sand and you're really stuck good, because you can damage the vehicle if you use the factory tow points for what they're not designed for. That for a second. Another thing I recommend you do, guys, is when you come over to any of these islands, Moreton or Fraser, is do a little cheat sheet up like this. One of my mates has done this up for this trip, and it's got all the tide times and the tide heights on it. If you don't have them in a little book, it's really handy to do that, because you're not going to get reception over the whole island here. And one thing you really do need to know is those tide times. So when you've got cars coming towards you on the beach, it's common courtesy just to indicate in which side you're going to go. You can, particularly when you've got higher tides and you're traveling at higher tides, it's just nice to let people know where you're going. You don't want to get confused and have to make sharp turns at the last minute. So we've actually done a couple of higher tide runs, guys, you might notice when you're looking at the footage. And if you're new to 4-wheel driving, and if your first couple of times on the beach, I do obviously recommend that you avoid doing the high tide runs. But there are parts of Moreton Island where you can get up the beach at the higher tides without too many problems. It's also helpful to have a look at that tide chart and just see how high is the tide that you're working with. You'll find, guys, on Moreton, Fraser and all these islands, you've got a lot of these little inland tracks. And while a lot of them are really easy to drive, you do see some people running around in 2-wheel drive on them, digging up holes in them. Really should avoid this. You do not need to be in 2-wheel drive on these tracks, guys. I know that there's a lot of people out there that'll tell you it'll save fuel, but at the end of the day, it's going to make an absolute minimal difference in your overall use when you're on the island. And we want to practice responsible 4-wheel driving. We want to make sure that these tracks stay in good condition and are open for many, many years to come. So drive around in 4-wheel drive and just, respect the tracks, guys. Another thing you can also do is in tracks with lots of blind corners and blind humps like this, is just give a little beep as you come up to it. You can do it when you're coming down the beat up and down beach entrances as well that don't have good vision. And that's just going to let anyone coming the other way know that there's a vehicle on the road. So I've had a little bit of a change of plans. Coming up the eastern beach at the moment, the tide's just a little bit higher than we'd like. So instead of do that extra 20 k's or so up to Blue Lagoon, we're going to cut into Middle Road and check out Mount Tempest. We're just going past the Roas battery at the moment, one of 2 installations built on Moreton Island for gun emplacements. And the idea of these in World War II was that if any ships were caught off the coast, if there was any Japanese invading force coming down to Brisbane, there'd be some defences along the island. Obviously these guns were actually never used in anger. In fact, all of the emplacements that were built up along the coast were never fired a hostile shot. So our first destination for the day was Mount Tempest. At 285 metres, it's the highest coastal sand dune in the world. It's an awesome climb up. It's a bit tricky, but some of the views are really unbeatable. What an absolute cracker of a view. You can see the entire island and Moreton Bay from up here, from Brisbane all the way up to the sunny coast and down to the Gold Coast on a great day. Although, it's also important to remember when you've got fishermen operating some of your equipment, make sure you check the video after it's been taken. Oops, there was some good audio explanations here as well. Oh well, maybe next time. Man, this middle road can get bad sometimes, particularly coming from east to west. You've also got to use the Tangalooma bypass, which is definitely one of the more average tracks on the island. So here we are at the desert. It's a fantastic little bit of Moreton Island, completely devoid of vegetation. And the reason for that is that the dunes in this area are actually constantly moving, meaning that obviously nothing can grow in it, but it also changes, and there's little dips and bumps and everything that I've never seen here before. It's actually also, there's about 35 or so different types of sand here, different colours of sand, different minerals. It's really quite a beautiful location. But of course, one of the main reasons people come here is for the sand tobogganing. There is some awesome slopes here, and you can pick up some real speed coming down some of these hills. It's a fascinating little spot. After all that running around the desert and climbing up Mount Tempest, the tide was out and it was time to head to our final destination of the day. So here we are at Blue Lagoon on the northern end of Moreton Island. It's an absolutely fascinating location for a couple of reasons. First off, unlike a lot of other lakes, Blue Lagoon is totally kind of separated from the water system. It doesn't receive any run-in from rivers or creeks. It all comes from underground springs. Comes up through the ground and then fills the lake up and keeps it at this nice little level here. What that means is that the ecosystem surrounding the lake is completely unique to this particular lake. All these insects that you see around, plants and dragonflies, you can't actually find them on other places here at Moreton Island. So it's totally enclosed, there's no movement in or out of this environment. It's also a fantastic spot for a swim, and we've been running around all day climbing mountains and sand dunes, so I think it is time to get in the water. Well, we covered a lot of island today, and it was time to head back and have a bit of a relax for the rest of the afternoon. We checked out a couple of the beach camping spots on the eastern beach on the way back, and damn, I tell you what, these would be an awesome place to camp if you had a little bit of time. Nestled up in the dunes here, you get an awesome view out of the ocean, and there's plenty of room to camp as well. Now, we couldn't have done this trip without the help of the boys from the Moreton Fishing Club, so I thought it'd be good to sit down and have a chat with one of their members, Luke, and learn a bit more about the club. So we're here with Luke from the Moreton Island Fishing Club. Is that the official name of the club, Moreton Island Fishing Club?
The Moreton Fishing Club.
Moreton Fishing Club.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So a big thanks to the boys and the club for letting us come along on this trip. We've had a pretty awesome stay here at the clubhouse. It's actually a fantastic little place. It's been here for a while, hasn't it, Luke?
It has been. The club was founded in 1938.
1938.
So
wow.
it's got a bit of heritage to it. I don't know a lot of it, but I do know some parts of how the club was established, how the house got here, how the house has evolved over the years.
Yeah, wow. Because you've had quite a bit to do with actually working on the house, haven't you?
I have. I think I joined roughly 5 years ago. My father's been in the club for about 8. Been coming here for 15, and yeah, we've sort of jumped into it. It's turned into a little bit of a man shed, but we all fish. We all enjoy fishing, and
yeah, awesome.
Some take it more serious than others.
Yeah. So some a bit more chilled, some a bit more serious. Yeah, awesome. Okay, and so tell us, what does it mean to be in a fishing club? Like, if I was a keen fisher, and I'm sure there's thousands of people come to Moreton Island every year to have a fish.
Yeah.
But what's the difference about being in a fishing club over here and just coming over for a casual fish?
Oh, probably the difference is that you have a support group. You have people that can help. It doesn't matter if you're a beginner or an experienced fisherman. You're always going to have a good time.
Yeah, for sure.
You learn a lot from the older boys who have been here for many years.
Yeah.
Your tricks that you wouldn't even think about. How to survey what you're fishing. Where to fish, how the island changes.
Yeah.
Probably the biggest thing is rigging up, having the facilities, Obviously the clubhouse has its own vehicles which are hired out on arrival. They also have a couple of sheds with fishing gear. They've got handmade stainless steel rod holders, stainless steel seats. A lot of the stuff that you see in the clubhouse is either donated or bought through the club's income.
And so I've kind of seen that, like, as I've been here, when you talk about that kind of being in part of a community and this whole clubhouse and all this equipment, it's all like donated and maintained by members, isn't it?
It is. So when you do come here, you pay a small fee if you're a member, and then members can bring non-members. As long as there's a member present at the club, then you can have as many as you want. The clubhouse has got a lot of funding through a couple of grants through the government.
Community grants, yeah.
Community
awesome.
grants,
Wow.
yeah. So they've added off-grid solar with battery backup for 240.
Wow.
They've had solar, gas, hot water installed. They've also had, obviously, some of these sheds here have been a grant, which helps a lot for a club that is almost non-profit.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not a lot of money that comes into the club, but what does come into the club gets pushed around and utilised to the very well.
Yeah.
You've got your hierarchy. You've got a president. You've got a vice president. You also have a treasury. And the treasury has been working extremely well over the past couple of years to maintain a healthy amount of money that comes into the club, and also to utilise it in areas in which the club needs, so that it can proceed and last another 80 years.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So
I've seen a whole bunch of history inside too. We were going over some of those photographs.
Yeah.
And you've got all those plaques up on the wall, and even just looking inside, there's that bunk bed we were talking about.
Yeah.
World War II style one.
Yep.
Big iron ones. It's fascinating, all the amount of history.
couple of hospital bunk beds from, I think, almost like army bases back in the day. Maybe not all of them left, but there's also a lot of donated lockers down in the shed. If you're a member, you're quite welcome to have one.
Yeah.
A lot of members share their stuff. Not all, but depends on what we're doing. And the history of the club with the fishing, a long time ago, there never used to be a house, or there was a shed.
Well, this
almost.
must have been one of the first sheds or houses in Kringle here, yeah?
I'm not 100% sure, but it was definitely one of the fewer ones,
Yeah,
the early ones, yeah. And it has evolved quite rapidly over the years. They used to come over. They used to put tents up on the beach. They used to go out there with gas,
Oh, wow.
oil lanterns, from what I've been told from the past. And now we go out there with LEDs and scare all the fish off.
Pretty crazy.
Some of the old boys don't like you getting the lights out. There was a couple of rules that I was told when I first joined. You take a light out to the beach, you've got to dig it down, so that there's no light on the ocean. A lot of the older fellas say if you get the light on the ocean, you scare the fish away. So you either dug a hole and went down the hole with it, or you kept the light off the water.
That's awesome.
And scared them away.
You were mentioning as well that you might be potentially looking for more members of the club.
Might possibly. We're actually quite a small club. We've only got roughly 40 active members,
Okay.
which have all been friends of a friend or family members. But I think the club needs to evolve, and it needs to move forward to maintain the exclusivity of Moreton, and to keep a healthier, youthful membership.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because we have a lot of elderly members, which is fantastic for the club.
So much
But
experience there, I
A
imagine.
lot of experience, and it's a shame that the younger generation don't see what these guys have gone through, how they fish, just their stories in general. You come over here and you learn something every time, doesn't matter what you're doing.
That's amazing. Well, thanks very much for all your help on this trip, Luke. I've
No
certainly
worries.
learned a heck of a lot, and
been
hopefully
good.
our viewers have as well.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to say. That's perfect.
No worries, Doug.
Really important things about being a member of the club is that the members take equal responsibility in ensuring that the Moreton Fishing Club stays in excellent condition and is well maintained. So before we leave, it's important the boys ran around and did a bit of work just to make sure that everything was as smick as it was when we got there. Really important to make sure that anything you bring on the island is rubbish, goes in one of the dump points at the island or is taken with you in the car. Well, what can I say? Moreton Island is an absolutely fantastic location. If you've got time to get there, I highly recommend you do it. Whether you're camping or staying at the resort, you'll have an absolute cracker of a time. Thanks to all the boys that helped this episode come together. You're a top bunch of blokes, and we had an absolutely awesome time. Unfortunately, it's always the saddest part of any holiday when you're leaving, but at least the view out of the back of the barge was a good one. Thanks guys, and if you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe to the channel, it'll really help us grow. We appreciate your support and we look forward to seeing you next time on Driving with Doug. We've had just an awesome, good time, blah 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 blah. We've just done some sick adventure, blah, 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 blah. So, fantastic place. Join us, here everyone, and I hope you are looking forward to it. Oh, Tucker, we've had just an awesome, blah, 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 too many awesomes. Perfect.
Do I look good? Do I look pumped?
Yeah, mate. Hey, Luke, mate. What are you
Hello.
doing?
Oh, mate, just digging. Oh, I can't swear. It's so hard not to swear. Oh, no.
Okay, now just look this way and just like stare at me. Give me a long, passionate stare. Wind and these squalls out in the background behind us. What was I going to say? Just keep it running.